Esports is growing rapidly. It is likely that soon the industry will be worth over $1 billion, something that very few other industries have achieved. And esports itself is pretty unique. When compared to other sports, it's very rare that two teams from halfway across the world can connect and compete against each other every single day. Because of this, esports is one of the most globalized things ever. And from this globalization, thousands of tournaments have popped up, some big and some small, but today we're going to be looking at 3 in particular. These to me are the most important ones, and thus are called the Big 3, due to their grandness in terms of money, players, and of course, the all-important hype. Now moving on to the world of FPS, there are many number of big tournaments and leagues, the Invitational in Siege, the Overwatch League Grand Finals, and of course the newly formed Call of Duty League. But in reality, all of these pale in comparison to what CSGO has to offer. CSGO is one of the biggest esports out there, and because of that, it has to have some of the biggest tournaments. And few other tournaments can capture the grandness and the allure of winning a CSGO major.
Sets the push up. What? Jumping dog's gonna fall down again. What is it? It's gonna be a follow-up and Help me! There's 7 seconds of got the bomb.
CSGO majors are where the best players make their mark on Counter-Strike history. From first-timers to old legends, winning a major is the greatest win a CSGO player can achieve. No ranking, league, or ladder feels quite like lifting a major trophy. Now, while CSGO majors are not the quote-unquote one big tournament of the year, they can actually have as many as 3 in one year, like in 2014 and 2015. But the reason that they're one of the 3 biggest tournaments of all time is because relative to the amount of tournaments overall, Valve-sponsored events, Valve being the creators of CSGO, they are incredibly rare. CSGO to many people is the second biggest esport right now and perhaps the second biggest of all time. And so in any given year, there are thousands of tournaments, leagues, and rankings. Also, in many ways, because there is no one big yearly tournament, it actually makes majors a lot more special, despite them being more often. In Dota, the International is the one big tournament, but there are also majors and leagues which players can win, even if they have never won the International. In CSGO, however, majors are really the only big thing that players can win. Of course, they can win leagues and other tournaments, and literally even be one of the best, if not the best ranked player overall, but if they don't win a major, that is what their career is judged after. Take the player Guardian, for example. He has won everything from S-tier ESL 1 tournaments to even being ranked the number 2 player in the entire world. But because he has never won a major in his entire career, that is what many remember him for. This feeling isn't just prevalent in CSGO, of course, many esports having their own version of the best to never win blank. League of Legends in particular having many players from Korea racing against time to win before mandatory military service, future video in the works. But in CSGO, that threat is just not being good enough to win, and it is constantly looming over players. Unlike Guardian, a happy ending was the pro player Zeus, who to date is the oldest major winner in history at almost 30 years old when he actually won it, famously saying that he would not retire until he wins a motherfucking major. Regardless of who wins and who loses, CSGO majors are quite unique in terms of the actual tournament itself. Like I said many times, they are not a one big tournament that happens every year, but the one thing they share with others in this video is the many amazing storylines that happen every year. From new teams to old teams, there is something for everyone. Majors are where Counter-Strike history is made. It is every CSGO player's dream to win a major, and while not everyone can, those who do know their names are now etched into esport history. They have become legends in their own right and can now sit comfortably upon their achievement. In the world of esports, MOBAs are almost always at the top of every category. And in a lot of ways, it actually makes sense. MOBAs, when compared to FPSs, are much easier to turn into esports, and if you look at something like CSGO or Siege, it is kind of difficult for advertisers to invest in something that has counter-terrorists and terrorists planting bombs. MOBAs, on the other hand, are much more advertiser-friendly, and thus, most of the time, will have a lot more money invested into it. In the background, you can see an example of a MOBA, this one being Here's the Storm, and this one being Smite being a little bit more popular. Now, as you can see, Smite looks, well, as you can say, friendly. There are no guns, there's no shooting, and thus Smite has a pretty nice and sizable esports scene. However, Smite is not the top of the MOBA food chain by any means, despite, in my opinion, being one of the biggest esports in the world. This means that the top two, this next game being one of them, have to be absolutely massive. But I think very few people actually can quite understand how massive these two games are. The first event is called the International. You can say a lot about Dota 2's The International, the storylines, the hype, the skill required to win it, but to a person that knows nothing about esports, all those things don't really mean anything. So for me, the best way to describe the grandness of this tournament is with a quick story. I was sitting in my car talking to my dad, and esports came up, and I started to talk about some of the bigger tournaments, and the International was one of them. And then I said that the prize pool is $35 million. And he, being someone who only seen glimpses of esports world, outright refused to believe that a $35 million tournament in esports was even possible. He wanted to say how some pro tennis players don't even make that much, and he's right. Even though the International, at least to me, isn't the biggest tournament out there, from a financial point of view, it is miles ahead out of any other esport tournament. In fact, technically speaking, this tournament is 7th in the world out of any sport, beating out things like Wimbledon in tennis and even the Super Bowl. And if you combine the prize pool of the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup in hockey, and finally the Super Bowl again, only then would it barely reach the $35 million of the International. The reason that Dota 2 can create such a large prize pool is largely because of two reasons. I said earlier that CSGO is the second biggest esport in the world, however, that was somewhat of a white lie. While most people believe that Dota is not the biggest esport, it is at minimum, at least I would say, tied for second with CSGO right next to it, and maybe in a lot of ways somewhat higher. Secondly, and much more importantly, the event is actually crowdfunded, and because video games right now generate an incomprehensible amount of money, $35 million doesn't seem all too far away. The International, of course, is much more than just money and numbers. It is the home of one of the most amazing games ever made, and thus the storylines and hype are absolutely incredible. The event itself isn't just the tournament. There are cosplay contests, short film contests, as well as many big updates to the game itself, as well as new hero announcements. This tournament has created an entire community, and the world of esports is all the better for it. Throughout this video, we talked about two specific tournaments, both from Valve. One with the largest prize pool in esports at $35 million, and the other with some of the greatest hype surrounding them. That is why, to me, this final tournament is the biggest one of them all. Not only does it have a substantially large prize pool, but it generates some of the greatest storylines in all of esports. Over in the world of MOBAs, and honestly in all of gaming, we have the greatest tournament in the world. the League of Legends World Championship. A month-long titanic duel to see who is the greatest in the world. More commonly known simply as Worlds, it is by far and undoubtedly the biggest tournament in esports. As the culmination of the entire season, it is seen as the ultimate prize in League of Legends. In 2019, it pulled more viewers than the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup, and the World Series combined. It even pulled more people than the Super Bowl with almost 100 million viewers. A combination of the best aspects of Dota's International and CSGO's majors, with over a $6 million prize pool and the hype that lasts the entire year, no tournament in the world can match the prestige and the excitement of Worlds. Now obviously in esports, there are quite a few of very, very heated debates. Some can be which esport is bigger, which player is better, and if some new game is a major esport at all. But in my opinion, it is very difficult to argue that this tournament right here is not the biggest one in the world. Sure, its prize pool is not the biggest in esports, but that's all it really has going against it. We have, of course, the aforementioned 100 million unique viewers that watched Worlds in 2019 as probably the biggest proof of this. But if we want to go even further, I found a couple of sources saying how many people actually play League every day. It was a culmination of, at minimum, 5 million people every single day. And that was a very, very low estimate. By comparison, CSGO and Dota have peaked at just under 1.3 million. Not even close to conservative estimate of League. And in terms of hours watched in a year, League has over 1 billion hours to its name, while Dota only has half that. Even if you think Worlds isn't the biggest esport tournament in the world, it is still one of the most recognizable games all across the world, especially in Korea. Korean League of Legends is simply on another level. There was a restaurant in Korea where the higher the rank you had, the higher the discount you got. And also, there have been stories of other regions' players being in super, upper echelons of League, like Grandmasters and Challengers, who will play in their very hard-fought games in their own lobbies in North America and in Europe. But when they go over to the Korean server, they get destroyed by relatively low-level people, to them, Diamond, which basically should be a free win. But in Korea, they can't compete. But of course, it isn't just Korea. There are major teams from almost every single major country in the world. It is more likely that in these countries, there are players playing League than it is that there aren't. Even people like me who don't ever even play League, let alone are good at it, still continue to watch it year in, year out. And while its toxicity has been pointed out, this is a result of how fierce its competition is. I've mentioned earlier how some players from select countries are in a race against time to win before their mandatory military service. This allure to compete and to win is like no other in the world. Its developer as well, Riot Games, is much more than just a simple game company. They have created huge universes around League of Legends. The opening ceremony you see in the background is just one example of the lengths Riot goes to create a community behind League. And now, of course, Worlds wouldn't be the biggest tournament without the moments to back it up.
Playing the game.
You're maybe in trouble here, Deathmark tries to clean it up for Ryu. Oh, look at the cleanse, look at the moves! Faker, what was that?
Faker with a huge play, the QSS.
I can't believe I just saw
he
that.
actually won that duel.
I can't believe that happened.
Telecom. Pina has Guardian Angel. Maybe he plays frontline. How much can they really get? Playthrough can I turn? Look, bang, looks for it all. He's got one. What else can he get? It's going to be Blake in his sights. He's coming back. Faker's low. How much more can they get? The stun's coming in, and it's Duke with the big play. But the turnaround from Creo.
Damage really coming from his wound now at the back.
Just he's cleaning up. Stanley gets one, Stanley gets two, Beanie gets the other one. That's going to be the counter ultimate. He might pop over this one. He gets the quadra kill. He gets the quadra kill. Off the back, 5 words. Stanley goes.
Even him has been killed, and they even got the pick off on Bang.
Rux doesn't actually have to stop pushing right now. They can delay the recalls. The arrows. Look at the arrow. He can teleport.
He's stopped Duke. With rethink and push. It's now on full. It's a teleport coming in for Specpon. Faker. They've got the CC. The mid laner is down. The unkillable Demon King has done his life. as Ruler stays in, life stealing. In the back line, they found more as Hootie does not have a way out, pops the yoke, but he has no exit route. Two more audible kill him down, but he gets to run away. They twitch to their aggro. They knock down Wolf instead. 5v3 in mid. In the moment of truth.
I said earlier that there are a lot of esports debates. One of the biggest right now is whether or not to even call esports an official sport. This one is by far the most popular in the media and generally outside of the esports community. But to me, it really doesn't matter anymore if esports is seen as a sport or not. This debate has only really hid the fact that esports has become more. The greatness of CSGO majors, the amazing success of Dota's The International, the fierceness of Worlds, and the incredible globalization of all three show that esports has gone beyond what a normal sport is.